Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over some severe storms which are going to be impacting parts of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic on Thursday. We already have a slight risk out for parts of the Mid-Atlantic on Thursday, so we're going to be going over all of that and more, and we're going to be timing this out for you guys to make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end so you don't miss out on any of this information. Here's what the current National Weather Service page looks like. As you can see, we have a few heat advisories in parts of the Northwest as well as a little bit of California as well. We have excessive heat warnings in that kind of pinkish or purplish shade in parts of California, Nevada, Arizona, a little bit of Utah, and also a little bit of Oregon and Idaho as well. And other than that, we don't have many other watches or warnings currently in place other than a few red flag warnings in southern Oregon. Yesterday, we had a high temperature of 115 degrees Fahrenheit in Death Valley, California. The low temperature was in Burgess Junction, Wyoming, where they got down to 21 degrees Fahrenheit. The highest rainfall report was in Long Lake, Texas, where they got 6.35 inches of rainfall, and there were no snowfall reports yesterday. Here's what the current Storm Prediction Center page looks like. As you can see, they greatly expanded that marginal risk. Yesterday, it was a much smaller area, only for parts of the coastal Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, but now it's expanded all the way into parts of the Ohio Valley and Tennessee Valley, even getting into parts of the Southeast as well. So it's a much larger area of marginal risk in the green, but believe it or not, they actually did shrink that slight risk just by a couple miles on each side. So we have a very similar slight risk to yesterday. Nothing really too big has changed in terms of where that slight risk is. Again, this would be for Thursday, so we're going to have one more update probably tomorrow on this event as well. The tornado risk, you can see that they have a 2% risk that goes from parts of upstate New York and Pennsylvania all the way down into parts of Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. And that's where they have that 2% risk of tornadoes. So tornadoes, again, aren't going to be the biggest threat with this. It looks like it's going to be more of a wind risk. It looks like wind damage is probably going to be one of the biggest issues with this type of event. And you can see that based on their wind outlook, you can see that we have a huge area of 5% risk, which goes from the Tennessee Valley all the way up into the Northeast. And then we have a 15% chance, which goes through parts of Virginia, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And that's where we have that 15% risk of wind damage in those areas. And if we look at the flooding outlook on their day 2 forecast for Thursday, we have a 5 to 10% chance or marginal risk in this light green shade, which covers all of the coastal Mid-Atlantic and parts of the coastal Northeast as well. And again, the flooding risk isn't too high with this. Doesn't look like we're going to see huge amounts of rainfall, but it is still there. So a few areas that, if you know, a certain road usually floods even with very minimal amounts of rainfall, you might want to kind of plan your road to work or your road to school the next day, just to kind of avoid those roads, because we could see 1 or 2 roads flooding here and there, especially in some of those pockets that get maybe 1 to 3 inches of rainfall out of this type of event. Here's what the current model guidance looks like, and you can see that we are expecting just a few rain showers by tomorrow early in the morning. So nothing that's going to look too substantial on the radar when you wake up early in the morning. So this is around this would be around 2 a.m. Eastern time tomorrow, and you can see that we have just some steady rain into parts of the interior Northeast and the Ohio Valley. But again, nothing that's going to be too major. Then if we go to around 6 in the morning, you can see that we have, or this will actually be around 5 in the morning Eastern time, and you can see that we have a few more convective storms starting to kind of spawn up in parts of the Mid-Atlantic. So nothing still that's too major, but we are seeing a few pockets of heavier rain even into parts of the Tennessee Valley and the Ohio Valley as well. So we are seeing a little bit of that convective activity starting to pop up on the map. If we go to around 8 in the morning Eastern time, you can see it is really starting to fill up, especially areas closer to the coast, where it looks like we'll start off the day with a lot of storminess. Then it does quiet down by the middle part of the day, and then as we go into the later portion of Thursday, that's when it might heat back up in the coastal areas. If you live maybe 25 to 50 miles miles away from the coast or more, that's when you're going to probably deal with most of these storms throughout the afternoon hours and even into the early evening. So again, this would be by 8 in the morning, here to be by 11, and we're dealing with still a few storms, but most of them are now starting to head offshore. Your next batch of convective activity is still all the way back here, and this is going to be moving into areas closer to the coast, and this is going to become our next batch of convective storms. So this would be by 2 p.m. and now you're really starting to see this map fill in. So we get all that daytime heating, and the atmosphere is really primed for this. We're not gonna have too much cloud activity. We're not gonna really be seeing too much obstruction of the sun. We're not gonna see anything really blocking this from heating up. So we're gonna see daytime temperatures that are gonna go right up into the 80s and maybe even a few low 90s in a few areas, and that should help these storms in the afternoon hours. Once all that daytime heating is done, those storms should start to ramp up a little bit more, and they're kind of just going to fuel off of those warm and humid conditions. So this would again be by 2 p.m. And you can see a lot of storminess, especially as you get further inland. So in parts of the Ohio Valley, the interior Northeast, and even into parts of the Carolinas and maybe Virginia as well, getting in on some of that storminess. Then it starts to all shift further to the east. So you can see how we have multiple different distinct areas or pockets of storminess. We have one in the Ohio Valley. We have another line going through parts of the Mid-Atlantic, and then a couple more that are down further into the southeast and also into areas of the interior Northeast as well. So we have different bands of convective activity, but it really does look like it's just going to be a widespread area of decent types of storms. They're not going to be overly intense. We're not going to see huge massive storms that are going to produce these big tornadoes, but they will be nuisance types of events. You're going to have a few periods of heavier torrential rainfall, and then of course it'll go down in intensity as that storm rolls out. So these aren't going to be these long-lived types of event. They're going to be maybe 5 to 15 minutes at the most, and then they'll move out, and then maybe you get hit by another round or two of these storms. So it's going to be kind of your typical afternoon thunderstorm event. Here to be by 8 p.m. Eastern time, and these are starting to die out by these points. So the daytime heating is pretty much all over with. They've already expended all the energy in the atmosphere. You can still see we have one band rolling through the interior Northeast and the Ohio Valley, and then one more on the other side of the Appalachians, closer to the Atlantic coast. And you can see we have two different areas, two distinct areas of storminess, but both areas are starting to die down. We're not seeing as intense of thunderstorms, and then by early on Friday morning, really they're dissipating by this point. We're not seeing too much more in the way of thunderstorms. If we look at the amount of energy in the atmosphere, the Cape, you can see that we are having some values getting a lot higher than what we were actually seeing yesterday. Yesterday we were barely getting up between 500 and 1,000. Now we're seeing some of these models, like the NAM model, which is on the screen right now, pushing this up to 1,500 to even 2,500. So on either side of the Appalachians, we have two different batches of high energy, and because of that, we're going to be seeing these storms really pop off. So we could be seeing, especially in parts of the Ohio Valley, where we have some of those higher amounts of energy through the afternoon on Thursday, getting in on some of the convective storms, and then again closer to the Atlantic coast, maybe another round or wave of these storms. It looks like if you're right in between for areas like West Virginia, central Pennsylvania, central New York, you guys are probably going to miss out on that just because it'll be a little bit too mountainous for the terrain will be a little bit too mountainous. It should break up those storms. There also won't be as high of temperatures, and also the dew points won't be high enough. So it looks like if you live right in the middle of the Ohio Valley and the Mid-Atlantic, if you live right in that central corridor, it looks like you guys should be fine. Nothing really too major to worry about in that area. If we look at the high temperatures, you can see that we're getting up into the 70s if you live in parts of the Ohio Valley, even a few mid-70s, and then you're getting into the 80s if you live on the east side of the Appalachians, into parts of the Mid-Atlantic and the coastal Northeast. So those are definitely warm enough. They're a little bit chillier than normal because we still have a bit of a cooler atmosphere or cooler air mass in place, but it is definitely enough to support a few afternoon thunderstorms. You really only need temperatures to be above 65 65 or 70, and we have that over pretty much that entire area, even in some of those higher elevation areas as well. If we look at the dew point temperatures for tomorrow, you can see that we also have dew points in the Ohio Valley getting up near 65 or even a little bit above that. And then if we look at areas closer to the coast, we're dealing with dew points that are getting between about, I would say, 68 and 72 would be the range there of the dew points. So that is definitely favorable, especially as you head into areas like Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, dealing with some of those high dew points, into areas such as southeastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey as well, dealing with those high dew points. So that should definitely help these storms develop a little bit more. And if we're looking at the amount of precipitable water in the atmosphere, you can see that especially along the coast, as expected, we have those amounts that are over 1.5 inches. So that's the area with the highest amount of precipitable water. But even through much of the Northeast, we have values over 1 inch, which is good enough to support a thunderstorm. So we don't need these super high amounts or super high values. Pretty much the ingredients that we have and the amount of energy and instability in the atmosphere is definitely enough to support a few thunderstorms, especially in an area like the Northeast where it's not as needed. We don't need as much to really get a thunderstorm in parts of the Northeast as you would in, let's say, areas like the southern United States, just because of the atmosphere and the environment around there. So the amount of energy and the amount of instability is less so in parts of the Northeast and the Ohio Valley, just because the atmosphere has bigger temperature differences and shifts within that part of the country. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.